to own it. Just wanted to take the time, learn all the things that I could about you. Now it's such a mess here. Oh, we are just stressed here. Used to be so easy with you.
Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
That's great to be here.
So you do a lot of different things. So tell us about the Zachary Foundation.
So the Zachary Horton Foundation was started a couple of years ago. Sadly, my son Zach died from an accidental opioid overdose, January 7th of 2020. And that began a whole process for my wife and I as we wanted to do something to remember him. We wanted to make something positive. As you might imagine, it's so difficult to think of anything positive from such a horrendous experience.
And that's 3 years, just 3 years ago.
It's been 3 years ago, and so, you know, our grieving process has been such a challenge for us, but one of the things where we've been able to find some meaning, and one of the things that has brought us some healing in this process is in starting the foundation. And so we basically, there's two strong elements to the foundation. One is one of awareness. We do education on the front end about, you know, to schools. We've been locally to Clovis Unified, to some of their schools and some of their organizations. I have an event coming up in March at Fresno State, which will be great, where we'll have hopefully 500 participants. And again, just to change in the front end, change the discussion around addiction.
So the event, when does that fall exactly? What's the dates?
So March 14th from 5 to 8.
March 14th, Friday. So it's a 1 day.
Yeah, so it's a one evening event. We're going to have five different speakers that have done TED Talks and wrote books. I mean, it's a harm reduction overdose prevention summit. And we'll be doing Narcan training for everyone in the audience. So everyone will leave with Narcan, which is the life-saving prescription to battle the current fentanyl crisis or any opioid overdose.
And everybody's supposed to have it.
And everybody's supposed to have it, and everybody will leave with a box of Narcan and also a fentanyl testing strip. So that's the other thing. If in today's world, if people, any street drug today is going to be laced with fentanyl. There's a strong possibility that it has fentanyl in it. It is such a strong, powerful drug that gives a great high in small doses, but 2 or 3 grains off and it can create an overdose that causes death. Narcan will completely reverse that and stop that from happening. So we're going to be able to get this in the hands of all the students that will come and anyone from the community. It's a free event.
Do we sign up though? Because it seems like it might get full fast.
Full fast. So on my website, ZacharyHortonFoundation.org. So ZacharyHortonFoundation.org. And there's a link right there. You click on it, you'll fill it out, and you'll sign it up. It's free of charge, and then you're registered.
I love that. No, this is great that you guys are doing that. I don't even know how you became so proactive when this is so recent. I mean, how long did it take before you're like, we got to do something?
You know, really within the first week, we wanted to do something, we just didn't know what to do. He was our only son.
And so what exactly happened?
Yeah, so Zach had become addicted to opioids. He went through treatment for about 9 months, in and out of treatment facilities. He was living in a sober living house. And on the positive side, in opioid addiction, relapse is not uncommon.
How old was he?
He was 19.
So did it start kind of in high school?
It started in high school. It started with vaping, and then smoking weed, and then my son also struggled with depression. So oftentimes, drug addiction or substance use disorder is combined with something else, and for him it was depression, and had ADD when he was younger, and so it was a stepping stones. And for parents, what that does sometimes, because there have been issues all along the way, you become almost numb to, oh, it's just something else. It's just another step in the process, you know, and you just never believe that it could be as bad as it is. And then that's where that denial set in for us. And the mission of our foundation is to is to break the stigma of addiction, because it's that stigma that stopped us, we believe, from reaching out for help. You know, how do you reach out? We're just so ashamed, you know. We couldn't tell our friends, we couldn't tell our family that, you know, about problems once we believed that and we understood that there was a problem. So in our foundation, part of the proactiveness is we want to change the discussion around addiction. We want people just to be able to discuss it. Things like your show here, just to be able to talk about it, people to come out. It doesn't have to be hidden anymore, right? We need to talk about it, and the more that we talk about it, then the more that people will seek out help. Families will seek out help before it has a tragic ending.
And I think part of the problem with the stigma of shame that you're talking about is that people aren't even, now it's not even listed anymore when that's a cause of death. And so now it's an assumption that if a 25-year-old or something around that age dies, that that's what it is. So now it's like it's almost like a public shame. How do we overcome that? How do we tell our friends and media to overcome that?
It was in the 1980s that the American Medical Association listed drug addiction or substance use disorder as a disease. But yet when we talk about our friends and family that have suffered from this, we don't talk about it in terms of a disease as if they had cancer or as if they had diabetes. When I was at my son's celebration of life, there wasn't a single person that came through the receiving line that spoke to me that didn't say, "Oh my gosh, Jim, I've got an uncle that's an alcoholic. Oh my gosh, Jim, when I was in college, my roommate became addicted to opioids." Oh my, everyone has a story.
One in every family.
But isn't it amazing that in all the years that I knew these people,
You didn't know that.
before, we never talked about it. My regular Saturday golf group, my poker group that I get together with, the people that I saw every week at work, no one ever talked about that. So it was like it didn't happen. And that's part of the shame. That's part of what we have to change, is how we talk about it. I don't need to hear about it now. I needed to hear about it before. I needed to know that it was okay. That it was okay for me to share that, and I didn't need to be ashamed of it. I needed to understand that it was a problem that other people had lived through, because there's success stories out there too, right? I heard a stat the other day that there are many more people living in recovery from addiction than there are people that are suffering outside of recovery. So let's celebrate those stories, right? Let's talk about that so the person doesn't have to live in hiding, right? They can come out and say, I've got a problem. You wouldn't hesitate to tell your closest friends if you had skin cancer and you were, what dermatologist do you use? You know, where should I go? You wouldn't even hesitate about it, right? It wouldn't be shame. We need to get to the point where that's the way that we talk about substance use. We don't hesitate saying, hey, meet me at the bar, we're going to have happy hour tonight. We're going to have happy hour every night. We don't hesitate to do that, but then all of a sudden, once it's not a problem until someone gets a DUI, right? Or someone starts missing some work, and then they're ashamed, but we weren't talking about all of that before. Let's just bring it out in the open. Let's have the discussion.
And it's interesting because there's two layers of that. So there's the embarrassingness of that disease, and then there's also the embarrassingness of depression and battling that. That's another thing we're not really honest about. And people that go through actual therapy, it's still for some reason you're not supposed to go, you're not supposed to talk about it, men aren't supposed to get there. There's all these different layers that we're not even supposed to be depressed anymore. So do you guys talk about breaking down those stigmas as well as breaking down the drug addiction stigmas?
Well, it's a focus that comes into every discussion that we have, because especially if we're talking about Zach, then that's going to be there. On our website, we have a list of resources, and some of those resources also are, deal with mental health, issues too, so people can reach out there. Because it's really hard. I've never met a young person in full-blown addiction that isn't battling with a co-occurring mental health issue. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. I'm just saying I've never seen that. They are so closely intertwined. People don't wake up someday, oh my gosh, today, you know what? I think I just want to become a heroin addict. Exactly. It doesn't happen that way. Oftentimes, that they're dealing with, the trauma that they experienced when they were younger. Well, something that's happened in their life has caused them to want to feel better, right? So how do I feel better? And we train our kids from the time that they're little. If you're sick, honey, here's some medicine, take this, right? And then if it's real bad, we take them to the doctor, and the doctor writes out a prescription, says, here, go to the pharmacy and get this,
Right.
and you'll feel better. So is it any surprise then that when they're teenagers and they go to school and they're with their friends and they're depressed or they're feeling one way or
Here's
another,
a pill,
or they
feel
want to feel
better.
better, here, smoke this, take this, drink this, you'll feel better. So we're kind of trained in our life, right, to respond that way. And that's why, again, the conversations, drugs aren't bad. If they are, then we would never have another Long's Pharmacy or Walgreens
Right.
or take your pick, any corner. There's a pharmacy, and that's what they do. They sell drugs, right? So they're not, drugs aren't bad, but why do we need to take them? And that's what we need to look at. That's what we need to talk about. Why is it that I need to feel better? Better than, well, and then that keeps me from learning how to deal with those feelings that are so negative to me that I can't express them in a healthier way, right? That's what we need to discuss.
That's really very important information, and it's very, the timing of you coming, and I talked about this with our production assistant. In the past just 3 weeks, I've experienced two people, one of my friends that had also OD'd on fentanyl, and then one of them was one of my pastor's son who also OD'd on, and this all came to light in the past, like literally 3 weeks, since February actually. So I'm just kind of like, it just keeps, the numbers keep rising. About a year or two ago, we brought this subject first on the show in the studio. So about maybe a year and a half ago, we talked about, they thought the numbers were going up. So then every year there's people that, layers and layers from different walks of life. And everyone seemed to have a really good family, just like your son.
Right.
So how do we get this to stop?
Well, boy, and that's it. And you said it. It's not like it's a particular demographic, right? That you would think, well, I expected that.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. You know how those people are. It's not like that. It can happen to anyone. So specifically with fentanyl, and make no mistake, when it's no longer a fentanyl crisis, it's going to be another crisis. There's going to be something else that's on the horizon, right? Every decade has a different drug that peaks out there. So there's always going to be something else.
But we never had anything as serious as this, or as strong as this, or as...
That's as immediate as this.
Yeah, that you could just take a little bit of something and possibly die. We've never had anything this bad before.
But just last week, there was 2 or 6 people in San Francisco that had died from it's an elephant tranquilizer that's on the market that's 100 times more strong than fentanyl, right? Well, again, it's like how much stronger do you need than 2 or 3 grains to kill you, right? But it's cheaper to produce, or it's not detectable, so they found a new way to get something in to mix into the drug supply. Wow. So the immediate solution to stop opioid deaths is to have Narcan. Everyone needs, the same way you want to have a fire extinguisher in your house in case there's a fire, you need to have Narcan in your house in case.
In our purses.
In your purses, to carry it with you, and it's available. I know that there's places in the county that it's available. You can contact me online, and I can do the training and give it to you for free. I'm part of the Narcan distribution project in California.
Everybody can get it for free, right?
Everybody can get it for free. And if you don't want to go through that hassle, you can. I think within the next month or two, you may be able to even get it over the counter. Now you have to go. You can go to your pharmacist and you can get with a prescription, you can get it, or you can purchase it there. But it's going to become available soon, it sounds like, over the counter, which will be wonderful.
So, I carry pepper spray on my keychain. Is it going to be available where we can carry it on our keychains like that?
Wouldn't that be wonderful to have
that?
That would be like that. I haven't heard that, but that would be fantastic to have it where it's there, because it's just a small nasal. It's just a small nasal spray.
That's what I was thinking we could.
Yeah. And now, all EMTs carry it, all police officers carry it now. It's in most schools. It's becoming more, it's becoming more accepted, as it should be. It just saves lives. So that's the first way, right? Let's stop, let's keep people alive, right, till we can get them help, right? That's number one. And then let's change how we talk about drugs to our children, and let's get them, if they're feeling bad, and we know that young people are going to experiment. It's part of that rite of passage, right? So we know that they're going to experiment. So let's not lie to them. Let's not tell stories that aren't true. So we need to be honest with how that discussion goes, and that's going to be different for every family, right? So I can't say this is the way that it has to be talked about or that it has to be done. But I guarantee you that if you're not having a conversation with your child about drugs, he's having it with somebody else. He's getting what they're telling him to do online, or on a TikTok video, or with his friends in middle school or in high school, and that's where he's getting his information. So become educated in it. And if you think that it's not going to affect your family, 1 out of every 10 people, the stats are, suffers from substance use disorder in some way. And 1 out of every 3 families is affected by it. Either someone that you work with at work, someone that's in your family, someone that you're close to, someone that's your neighbor. It's going to touch you. It's going to touch your family somehow. So let's start that discussion about it. Then there's things that can happen in the state government and in the government, and those are politicized oftentimes and are so diverse, and that'll be
We
time
just
for
got to
another
work on what
discussion.
we can do right now.
That's right.
And it is crazy what you're saying. As I said, when we first talked about this on this show, like a year and a half ago, I hadn't known anyone personally. And then boom, in the last month, and I know like 2 people, boom, that quickly. So
Right.
it's just growing, and we hear it's growing, and the numbers will probably even get worse after what you're just saying, after that's 1 in 10.
Well, this was something I thought about last year. I want to say there was 100,000 people died from overdose last year, 120,000 or something. It was like what is that, like 300 a day, right? And then I was talking to somebody, and I said, remember, and it was also last year that there were 2 737s that crashed. I don't know if you remember, it was either last year or the year before. Boeing 737s crashed. There were about 350 people on each plane that died. That happened twice in a month. And you know what the airline industry did? They shut down every 737 in the world.
Wow.
Could no longer fly until they figured out a problem, until they figured out what it was, until they fixed the issue. Now think about that. We have that many people dying every single day, and yet we don't have perhaps a conversation. I mean, we're having a conversation about it, right? A year later, you had a conversation a couple of years ago, but can you imagine if there was a plane dropping out of the sky every day, killing 350 people? It would be the front page of the news every
Right.
single day. That's all that we would talk about until we solve that. So again, there's a way that we look about this disease relative to other things that are happening. And I'm not saying that we need to blame anyone for that. That's part of our societal consciousness, I guess, if you will, about how we think about that, about what do we deem to be important? What is there still things that are so shameful that we can't talk about? Because in some ways we still feel, maybe some of us, that, well, you know what, they kind of did it to themselves. I remember I had just started the foundation. I had set up a booth at an event, and I had my table, and I had some pamphlets out about the foundation. And back then, just for resources, where people could go in one place and find out all the resources in the area that they could see. And I was handing those out, and a little girl came by with the Girl Scout troop, and she was, I don't know, 11 or 12, and I have a picture of my son, on our banner, and she said, "Is that your son?" I said, "Yeah," and said, "What happened?" I said, "Well, he died from a drug overdose," and her words, and I remember they hit me so strong. He says, "Oh, so he did it to himself."
Wow, and that's at 12.
He killed himself.
Isn't it great how honest kids are?
And I thought, well, and that was her perception. she had never heard. It's like if I had said, yeah, this is my son and he passed away from cancer, she wouldn't have said.
Right.
She wouldn't have said, oh, he lived under wires that caused cancer, or or somehow
right.
it was his fault. He had sinned and God had slayed him for through cancer. It wasn't it, but because it was drugs. And again, that's the impact
And it's
that her
great that she
society
said
had
that
had.
because she's a kid and they're honest. So that's what she was inputted. So now you know
That's
that
right.
that's what's going around.
So how do we
change that?
How do we change it?
Right.
Because I guarantee that every young person during when we do Red Ribbon Week, and we have the Just Say No campaigns, and we have Red Ribbon Week, they all take a pledge not to do drugs. Because they're in 3rd grade, they're in 4th grade, right? Because none of their friends do. I've yet to find an 8-year-old that's a drug addict,
Right.
And so, but when they get to high school, that's no longer the cool thing. And I often tell when parents say, "Oh, you know what, my kids wouldn't do that," they would tell me, "I know my kid." All I have to say is, if you have a teenager, does your teenager fix the hair the way more like you do, like you fix your hair, or like their friends fix their hair? How do they cut their hair? How do they dress? Do they dress more like you, or do they dress more like them? Because when my little boy was 8, he had my same crew cut, right? We would go get shirts together. I'll tell you what, by the time he was 13, 14, or 15, we didn't look anything alike. He wanted to be like his friends, right? That's who has the influence, right? So that whole, and again, that whole thing was, and again, sadly enough, we have those conversations about drug awareness once a year during Red Ribbon Week. That's when we talk about it. We don't talk about it all the time. And we need to talk about this all the time.
And since you're really involved in it, have you also, I just recently heard that, is it through vaping and other things that they're slipping fentanyl in? Because now I heard they're really slipping in everything. What have you heard of the new?
I haven't heard that. I think the most dangerous thing that I can think of, any drug that you take today that doesn't come from a pharmacy,
Right.
there's a high probability that it has fentanyl in it. So if you come to March 14th out to our event, we'll have fentanyl testing strips that you'll be able to go home with. So you can purchase fentanyl testing strips.
I love that. Okay.
So you can test. If you're someplace and someone gives you a drink, you can test it to see if it has fentanyl in it. Now, I won't tell you if it has other drugs in it, right?
Okay.
Right? But, or, if you're at a party someplace and someone has brought, and I mean, let's be honest, that you're gonna have a party. I might not have a party where someone brings a bunch of cocaine, right? But I'm sure it still happens, right? Go to a party, someone has meth, someone has coke, someone has some pills. You can break a pill open, you can scrape a little of the inside and a little cap, put some water in it, dip the fentanyl testing strip in it, and you're gonna know in 2 minutes whether or not it's laced with fentanyl.
Well, that's great.
Right.
We're going to come to that. My last question for you, and this is one for parents that are watching that have had their kids pass away. What do you do to stay sane besides start the Zachary Horton Foundation? I know you said you're a ski instructor part-time. Are there activities that you do to stay, like how do you cope?
So, I got to give a shout out to Heinz Hospice is a great facility here in our valley, and they have groups for people that have lost a loved one, that have lost a child. And so for us, we went to the loss of a child group. And after going to that group a couple times, we now help co-facilitate. We volunteer there. And so oftentimes we're involved in that group. That has been very healing for us, is to be available to other parents who are fresh and new into that experience. But I got to say, I was a mess the first 6 months or a year, and I went on some antidepressant medication, which really helped me just to become sane. I couldn't drive down any street in Fresno without a memory triggering me.
Wow.
Of my son, because we lived here his whole life, and I was a stay-at-home dad, from the time he was 6, until he passed. So, I took him everywhere. We did everything together, and I couldn't drive anywhere without having to pull over, just sobbing. I was falling apart. So So again, seeking out medication, seeking out some drugs to help me through that point, and it was very, very beneficial. Working in the groups has been beneficial, and then again, staying. You know, I teach and practice martial arts, and I do the ski instructing, and I do as much activity as I can, and that's helped in my mind. And now I've become a voracious reader, and so I read everything I can get my hands on about this problem, and just put hours and hours and hours every day into the foundation.
Well, thank you so much for coming on our show. I really appreciate it. And I will be there on March 14th.
Oh, awesome. So go to the website and you'll click on the banner at zacharyhortonfoundation.org, and then it'll walk you right through the whole process.
That sounds easy enough.
It'll be great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So tell our viewers who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Roman Raintree, and I'm actually a community organizer with the Industrial Areas Foundation. And before that, I actually helped lead a local effort here to rename our ancestral tribal lands from the former name of S Valley to its current name of Yokuts Valley.
So it's one location or multiple locations you guys renamed?
So it was multiple locations. There's the basin, and then there's a populated place, and then there were multiple other places, but those two were the specific places that
Which two ones?
It used to be S Valley Basin, and then S Valley, the populated place, like the town name and whatnot.
So Squaw Valley was basically
Correct.
I'd called it initially. So how long had it been named that before you guys renamed it?
Oh, shoot. I would say well over 100 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well over 100. So we'll go back to the 1870s. So, yeah, I'd have to stop and do the math, I suppose. 130, 150 years.
And then you guys renamed it in what year was that?
Well, it just got officially renamed last month.
Last month, so it's 2023.
That's correct. So the United States Board of Geographic Names reviewed it and decided that after all consideration from all parties that moving forward it should be named Yokuts Valley. And
So did you guys get signatures? What's all the process? Because I've never renamed a place. I'm really curious of the process that goes through it.
Yeah, so I guess not that many people realize that the federal government has a process for it. They have a petition. So you can submit any kind of name. They prefer you don't name it after an individual.
Okay.
But they have little restrictions like that. But one of the requirements is that you have to propose a name. If you're going to ask for it to be changed, that you have to propose a name. So fair enough. We asked for Yokuts Valley because it is the indigenous. It represents the people that are first inhabitants, the first indigenous people there. In its native language, it means the people. So we're in essence really calling it the People's Valley.
How do you spell it?
Well, the way it is spelled, it's spelled Y-O-K-U-T-S.
Okay.
So in our language classes, it'll spell it Y-O-K-U-T-C-H because it tries to emphasize more of the correct pronunciation.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, again, the first way, the current way that they've renamed it Yokuts, it's more common, so we thought maybe it'd be easier for non-natives to really adapt to it, relate to it, and embrace it, hopefully.
How many signatures did you have to get for that?
So I think at the last time I checked, the petition, the Change.org petition, was nearing in 37,000 signatures.
Wow, really?
So yes.
That's more than the population of that valley.
That's correct. And that was actually one of the arguments for why we wanted a community discussion, that it should be something like this. But unfortunately, the local representative never wanted that and never embraced that until, I think it was 3 days before the governor signed into law AB 2022. So
How'd you guys get that many signatures?
I think a lot had to do with once we made a public service announcement with regards to the name being a pejorative and the impact that that word has had on our community. I think a lot of people don't understand how it lends itself to the murdered, missing, and indigenous peoples crisis that is affecting us in all of Indian country here. And I don't even think just here, just worldwide, indigenous people are always kind of subjected to that kind of a dominion
So
and
explain
abuse.
that because of a name, people are getting murdered.
So I guess what you might want to say is that when you cultivate a community that embraces a name that is a known slur, and you can call somebody that, and society says
Was
it's
it always
okay.
a slur from back in the day, from in the 1800s, or was it recently a slur? At what point did it become a slur?
Well, I guess to be fair, there are some Eastern tribes that do just regard it as meaning woman, and there are some tribes that regard it as meaning the C word, equivalent to the C
So
word.
it depends which tribe you're with.
That's correct. And
Okay.
so then who brought it out? Because that word is not indigenous and not found in any indigenous language west of the Mississippi. So who brought that word out to California and specifically to this area? It was the early settlers. And how did they view us? They didn't exactly view us in a favorable light. When you look at California history, when they used to pay for bounties on our scalps, how they used to dehumanize us, and amongst those are some of the nicer words. So I
Right.
mean, so that word has its negative connotations. So it's always been a point of contention.
But even though it wasn't here, because I know in the F word isn't as bad in parts of Europe as it is here. The meaning is not quite the same.
I don't know what it would be in parts of Europe, to be frank.
So that's what I'm saying, but you're saying that it wasn't really, it depends on what tribe you're in for that word to be even a negative word. And I'm sorry if I said it and offended you.
No, I'm
I
not-
want
not
the viewers to know because they know the term
No,
by that name.
yeah, no, it's, I guess depending on which tribe and then who used it, that word is not indigenous to any California tribe. And so that word, as far as I've known, has never been used in a positive sense. So it gives itself, when you cultivate that word, for instance, when the elected official had a community meeting, I asked the group, if it's such a positive word, go to a powwow or any other gathering where indigenous people are and find an elder and call her that. If you're so confident it's such a positive word, then you shouldn't have any fear, any kind of retribution doing so. And most people won't do so because you're going to have some sort of blowback that's negative. It has these negative connotations, and when you create an atmosphere or ultimately a society that says it's okay to call women this, then you end up with people like our actress Misty Upham, who was sexually assaulted at the Golden Globes and then had to go back to her table with the Weinstein associates and Weinstein himself in her tattered dress. Well, how do we get to that point in this day and age with this word? It's because we're allowing people to go ahead and degrade us like that. And so once we changed the word, not only did we reclaim that energy, but we renamed it after the people. So two things have happened. We've reclaimed our power and acknowledged a voice that has long been silenced with our indigenous women who are being assaulted to the tune of this word. But also by naming it after the people, we have gone ahead and said, we acknowledge you because every single tribe in that area had all of its treaties broken with. So lawfully speaking, none of those tribes are Native American. They're anything but. They're still in the process 4 decades later of proving who they are. And it starts to generate a whole new conversation. And that's really what it was about, acknowledgement. We're invisible. Nobody hears us. Nobody knows our story. So how do we begin to create those dialogues? Because that's how change comes about, having these dialogues, having hard questions, sitting with those hard questions, entertaining those hard questions, but dialoguing and remaining in communication. That's how we grow together. And that's really what needs to happen now with the community and the new name. It's a dialogue. This is what the name is. How do we move forward from this? How do we have our community pride? I almost feel like there should be something developed at the community library that represents the true history of the town. Bring out the Spaniards' history. Highlight the first settlers, the first families that still reside in that town. Highlight all the tribes. Bring all that out. There needs to be some sort of healing, and I hope that rather than the supervisor and the community members use their energy towards anger, use it in a positive way to better the community, to make it heal again and move forward. And that's what we're all about. I mean, we're not going to get mad as a tribal people. We're just going to pray and move forward in a good way. And so that's what the whole mantra was during the efforts. Don't go mad. Don't get pickety. Just learn the game. And
Were people getting mad?
oh yeah, people made death threats against me. People spat in my face. People.
What angered them the most? What was it? Because I'm sure that you asked these questions. What did they tell you it angered them the most?
From what I understand and what a lot of people had expressed is that they felt like their history was being robbed. This community goes back to before they were born, with their grandmothers growing up in this community. And this is a town name that they have many fond memories with. And they have many fond memories of that name. And in fact, some people are even taking pride in being called that word. So they have a positive rapport with it. And it's unfortunate that so many other people don't have that same positive rapport, but that seems to be really the larger pushback, that they feel like their history is being erased. And it's really not. It's just evolving. The community is going to stay the same, just as it had when the early settlers came. Community is just going to evolve, and now here we are, many years later, centuries later, you know, trying to say, hey, we're still here. Can we not be called this? Can you afford us the same dignity and equality that you guys like as Americans? Can we also have that? And that's really what the discussion was about. And I think when folks begin to put their personal feelings away and acknowledge that a new chapter is beginning in their community, that they can begin to really delve in and to empathize. Because I think a lot of people just kind of sympathize. They don't really understand, but when you empathize, you put yourself in that person's shoes. And I think a lot of that, I feel very, very, emotional in the sense that, what about the financial support for the impact, the cost change to the merchants? They are always on my mind. And it was one of the reasons why I had asked to do a fundraiser, a GoFundMe. And again, the failed communication with the elected official, the failed acknowledgement to put it on the agenda.
So what was the GoFundMe for?
To raise money specifically for the cost of the change for the residents, the merchants that have their businesses.
So it wouldn't
named
come out
after
of
this.
taxpayers' money?
That's correct. Why should it? It shouldn't. And you know, I'm sure if we dialogue, we can find it. The Board of Supervisors have millions of dollars to remodel their chambers. Why don't they have millions of dollars to help out their constituents? I think those are other questions that are probably difficult to talk with and stay with, but we need to ask those questions. And those were dialogues that I felt like the elected official shut down when you said, I don't want to talk to you. I don't care what you're doing, and you're just going to react to what we did. I think having this right now would have saved us a lot. We could have said, well, what is the fiscal impact going to be? Let's start talking about
What is
that.
the fiscal impact?
I still don't know.
Well, you made the changes. I'm sure you thought about that before you
I've thought about
embarked
that.
upon the change.
I've thought about that, but I had no way in which to measure that. I wouldn't even know where to begin. And I think those are conversations that should be had with the elected officials.
So we don't know if it has impacted anybody.
Don't know.
Don't you usually try to figure that out before you make a change?
Well,
You know what I mean? Like if you're budgeting something, you're like, well, can I do this? Is this feasible for us? You do that in your own personal, checkbook, and then when you're doing a community effort, I imagine you would do the same thing, or when you're going to go on a project or make a building, something like that.
No, I 100% agree. But I guess where does the line of responsibility side with? When does the culpability with the elected official kick in? I go to you and I'm letting you know every step of the way. I'm letting you know that I submitted this petition to the federal government a year before they even address it and review it.
So there was no response?
So there was no response. So you've been known every step of the way, and you've ignored me every step of the way. So
Because they just didn't want the change to happen. Is that part of why?
I think he grossly underestimated how far and how quickly our progress would be. And then when you look up and the governor's signing a law that's going to go into effect in 2025, it's a little too late. You know, now you want to have a community meeting, it's a little too late. You're supposed to have those a long time ago. Your constituents are asking you. I never asked them to agree with me. All I asked is, hey, Mr. Raintree, I might not agree with you. I might agree with you, but let me listen to you. Let me afford you the you know, the respect to at least hear you out, not give you 3 minutes or 2 minutes, depending on the public comment section in the Board of Supervisors meeting, and say no. So that's what I mean about communication. It takes a lot of dialogue, and I think that's what's really interesting as a community organizer. I don't go in there with a plan and saying, this is the plan and this is what we need to do. I go in there and say, let's talk. Where are you from? Where are you raised? And, you know, do you follow a faith? Do you have a particular spirituality? Like, let's get to know each other on a human level, because then we'll find out that we'll probably have a lot more interests than issues that overlap. And those interests really segue into those issues, but we'll find out that we're all parents, we're all have our own parents, and there's things that are all affecting us here, just as community members, like our infrastructure, you know, our air pollution and things like that. There's ways that which we can dialogue and say, you know, I don't like this, what's going on in our community. And I think coming together, you harness that relational power that you create with somebody. They trust you through those dialogues. You share a vulnerability with somebody. And unfortunately, the elected official just objected to that.
Well, those are all very important issues that you mentioned, you know, air quality, infrastructure, all of that. But then some people might say, well, this is all over a word. I know, you know, growing up, your parents say sticks and stones, they break your bones, but words can never hurt you. And then now words become powerful because you guys really want to change it, but then some people are feeling passionate, like you said, they're taking it personally and saying, well, now we have to rechange the way what we grew up and everything. So shouldn't there be kind of a mediator to kind of work with you guys, work with the people that think it's being changed, any type of mediation like that? At what point is this word the first point before we work on all those other important issues?
Well, I think I was always open to any kind of idea. Like, I would have been open to that kind of idea when I went to the Board of Supervisors. Anything was on the table. Let's just have a dialogue. And I think having no dialogue, we can't even discuss those possibilities. And all I was trying to do is say, hey, did you know that this year is the 170th anniversary for all the treaties that were signed in this area are broken? Did you know that Fresno County has the largest population of tribes actively petitioning to be acknowledged as Native American than any other county in America? And that California accounts for 1/4 of all petitions. And we get like this because California legislators told Congress in 1853, you're going to give these Indians the right to vote? You're going to give these Indians some land? You can't do that. Don't honor those treaties. So those treaties were never honored. So we don't have rights to a land. I don't have a land base. And when you have a way of life that's intricately connected to your land, and your land is now called as pejorative, it kind of skews with your traditions. It pairs you in ways you don't even realize. The intergenerational trauma is what I'm talking about. And so when we change the name, you reclaim a bit of that power back. So you think
that was the first step into all the other things?
I believe that's the first step into gaining acknowledgement, because what are people doing now? What is a Yokut? Who are the Yokuts? Where do they go? Where are they from? We're talking about us now, whereas before nobody even knew what that was. What is that word?
How many tribes are there?
You know, I don't know offhand, but if you're talking about in Fresno County that are non-federally recognized, there's 9, followed by Monterey with 7, followed by Los Angeles 5. Those are the 3 most in California, and together they account for 1/3 of all California tribal petitions still waiting. And it's not uncommon for these tribes to be waiting decades in a bureaucratic mess. My tribe alone has been petitioning since before I was born. So what tribes are getting the rights and what aren't? Because some are. I hear that some. Correct. So
there's like a lot of like fighting. There's a lot about like the casino stuff. So who's getting acknowledged and who's not getting?
So those tribes have a land base, and those tribes are federally acknowledged. So they are considered a sovereign nation.
Okay.
So our tribes, they came in history, said, well, we don't feel that your population in that time, in the 1850s, warrants such a land base or a rancheria.
Is that because there wasn't enough of you? What was the purpose?
Correct. So they gave us allotments. So a lot of our tribal members were given allotments, like my family has the land, and that's how that came about. A lot of other tribal members have that land, and what it was to try to make the Native American, the California Indian, an American citizen. Let's give them a private lot of land. That way they're not homeless. They got something, and if they sell it off, that's their prerogative. If they lose it to the taxes, that's the American way. It's up to them now. And so that's how it kind of bit. And with that, maybe it's a good thing. You might have some land, but at the same time, you don't have the acknowledgement. So that means you don't have equal rights. You don't have equality when it comes to access to health care, access to education, access to land.
So only some tribes are getting those rights.
Those correct. The ones
And
that have a
somewhat.
treaty that
Okay.
the federal government says, we acknowledge that you're on this treaty and you're a sovereign nation. Unfortunately, because the early California legislators said, don't honor these 18 treaties that you made with 119 tribes. Don't honor it.
Or just honor this many, or this many tribes.
Those tribes were already honored
Okay.
prior to that. And so these were the last of California. They were, by the time America came out, they were trying to ramp up their land acquisition, and these were the last treaties with the last of the people on the West Coast. And so those treaties ultimately ceded all this acreage of land that's now California. But early California legislators said, you can't acknowledge these people. What are you going to do? Give them the right to vote? You're going to give them their own parcels of land? You can't do that. That's our best. So because of the discrimination, because of the mindsets of early California legislators, we, the descendants of those tribal people, now are still asking for equality. We made a deal. The deal was, you get the land and you guarantee our basic health care, you guarantee our basic housing, you guarantee our basic education. You guarantee that because you're getting the land. So now you have the land, and now you're thriving as the 5th largest economy in the world, and here we are still begging to be acknowledged. At some point, we have to say, okay, this isn't working, and what are we going to do? We can't take the angry route. That's not us as a people, first and foremost. But you can't take the angry route, because that's not going to get you far. So we return to our prayers, and we more or less let the Creator guide us. And that's really what it was with the supervisor. Don't get mad. The Creator knows what he's doing. And when the Creator let us know through Deb Holland that the S word was going to be changed federally from over 600 locations in America, the pendulum of momentum suddenly swung to our favor, and it stayed with us. So it's the same thing. Just move forward in a positive way. Keep making the positive choices. Keep staying in the spirit, and things will come along. I don't know what will come of this show. You know, you might put up our address of acknowledgealltribes@gmail.com, and somebody out there might say, hey, you know what? That's somebody I want to make a documentary with. You know, that's somebody I want to highlight this story. Who knows what will come from? And I think that's the beauty of the journey and the beauty of being in that spiritual place with the Creator.
So what now are you not getting? Because you guys are able to vote. So what now are you not getting that you want? I mean, just a little bit of my background is I'm Armenian.
Each
took us, and then we had a lot of we've gone through a lot with just in my country being acknowledged having a genocide. You know, you don't want to be acknowledged not in the history books and everything. So I understand the frustration of living in a place that doesn't even want to acknowledge that your ancestors were literally murdered and slaughtered, and is why I'm here because of my great grandparents getting they watched their parents get murdered and slaughtered in front of us. So that's all we ever wanted as a people. It's starting to happen. Change is starting to happen for us. What changes more would you like to see that hasn't happened? Because now you can vote. So what is it? Is it still overland? What more things do you guys would like to happen after this?
So I think the umbrella is the acknowledgement, because when you get the acknowledgement, the federal government is going to return land immediately. Because you have to create a land base for the tribe. And then you're talking
Well,
money.
who gets the land though? Isn't there somebody on it now, or are they taking somebody off their land and put it to you? Even though it's originally your guys', what happens now with where is the land coming from?
So the land would come from the land that is being held in trust, and I guess.
So what's on it right now?
It's in trust to the Federal Forest Service. So it's just natural barren land.
Okay, so got it.
So it's in trust with them. So, and there's a lot of acreage and land that California has that's not in private ownership, but is owned by the state. And so that land can be given back to the indigenous people. In fact, California is making certain steps to do so because the indigenous people have been caring for that particular land for eons, that we know how to care for it better, especially
I
with
bet.
the client.
Right.
You know, so I mean, there's a lot of elders that do sacred burning here in the area, and that helps out with the droughts. And so there's a lot of other folks throughout California that have their own ways of life and their own knowledge that comes from their practiced ways of life.
So that's the next step. That's the next thing that we wanted to accomplish in this.
Yes, the next step really is to call on Governor Newsom to acknowledge all tribes. And with that, you know, that's really just the mantra. Governor Newsom acknowledge all tribes here in California, but we're really asking them to lead the country, as California has done so many times in so many areas, in establishing a state tribal acknowledgement program. And that is only done with 13 other states in America. And California can dictate what rights it wants to give. For instance, it could say, you know what, your tribe is not federally acknowledged. It doesn't get any health benefits at the moment, but we have covered California here. We can extend some of those same benefits that we extend those federally acknowledged tribes to you guys as well. We have a new program where students could go to UCs for free if they're from a federally acknowledged tribe. Well, maybe we can extend that. Maybe there's ways, you know. Maybe it takes an establishment of a tribal bank in California, the first California tribal bank or something like that. And it just takes thinking outside the box and being creative. I mean, there's money out there to be made, so let's go make it and let's put it to use, you know. We're not trying to come and tell people you're doing wrong. No, let's work together. You know, I'm sure we can figure a way. Let's just dialogue. Let's communicate. Let's keep those dialogues and that conversation going. Why not, right?
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for coming on my show and sharing with us
Thank
today.
you. It's been a real honor and pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on my show today. How are you doing?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing great. So tell our viewers who you are and what you do.
So my name is Ralph Edwards. I'm the lead singer and kind of owner of Vibe Check the Band. That's vibecheck.theband on Instagram and Facebook, places like that that you can kind of book us, and we do a bunch of shows all around Fresno and, you know, wherever we can actually.
So what is the vibe?
So the vibe, that's crazy because we kind of mix it up. We do all kinds of different genres, and yeah, we mix it up a lot. We go from like Bruno Mars to Michael Jackson to Journey, whatever we can.
And so that's how people get a hold of you, and then you come perform. But then you also do more than just perform. Then you have other things. You kind of bring the event, bring the venue, really bring it. So tell us about that.
So we bring a whole show. So, you know, if you book us at your venue, we'll make, you know, we have a whole kind of like social media team that'll do flyers, get everything going, you know, even sell tickets if we need to. Whatever we can.
So what happens? Is the venue just like, we want to have that, come and then bring it?
Yeah,
so venues reach out and they just say, come and bring it?
Yeah, because we'll do like an acoustic show, which is like me, a guitar, or maybe me and 2 guitars, or the full band, which is a full 5-piece band.
Oh my gosh, that must take a lot of space.
Oh, it's fun though.
So you have to do the big, I bet, but you have to take, so people have to know that they have to have a lot of space for all that.
Oh, definitely, because we bring our own speakers and everything too. So bring the sound and bring instruments, everything we got.
And what about weddings? You do like bring a lot of weddings and
Definitely,
events?
definitely. We love doing weddings. Yeah, no, weddings are kind of my favorite. You know, weddings and private parties are the best because there's no strings. You don't have to, you can do whatever you want there. And
You feel the vibe of that, and that point you're like, okay, this is what they want.
Definitely, definitely.
They should feed you everywhere you go, really? They don't?
Right, hey, it just depends. It just depends on the venue, especially some that don't have food.
Well, and I noticed too, bands are the last to leave. Like you kind of like shut the place down. So a lot of times the food's done by the time you guys leave.
Yes, so usually when the food is done at 10, we're still playing till 11 or 12, so it is what it is, though, it's okay.
So what's your favorite thing to play out of all of it?
Like the favorite venue?
Like, I know you're the favorite music, the favorite type of music.
I'm a huge Bruno Mars fan, so anything Bruno Mars that gets people dancing and, you know, I like people to sweat as much as I do up there. So,
So are you good at taking requests, or do you kind of have to know that in advance?
so I challenge people to, if they want to hear a certain song, to send me a message on Instagram, because we'll learn it and we'll
I love that.
perfect it. You know what I mean? It was not just going to be like, okay, yeah, no, okay, it'll be in this key, it'll be this note, but we'll learn it and get everything right for you.
Oh, and what kind of music will you like? That's not your jam. You can be honest.
Not my jam. I mean, honestly, we'll do country music. It's not my favorite. I know a lot. That's a very distasteful answer, but a lot of people love country. We'll do it, but we just, you know, it's not my favorite.
So you'll even do like some System of a Down?
Yeah, I mean, shoot, that's what I like to say we bring to the table, is just completely
Variety.
Whatever you want us to do, we'll try to do it.
And then where can people go to look at some of the things that you have done, like the music that you have done, the style that you bring to it?
So vibecheck.theband on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok right now. So we have 3 different avenues for you to go to. We all post videos on there, along with flyers, along with like our weekly, like what we're doing that week. So I just posted our weekly shows. We have 3 this week and starting tomorrow.
That's so cool. I like when people are really active about that, because if I want to know what to do, I want to go on, I want to be like, this is where I go, this is for that.
Right, yeah. No, that's our main thing. We want to make sure that people know where we're going to be at, because if you don't know, then how are you going to get there?
Is there a location here that you go to on the weekly?
On the weekly, yes, there's 2 actually.
Okay.
So we have a residency. It's ladies' night every Wednesday night at Yosemite Falls Cafe on Blackstone and Shaw.
Okay.
And then every Thursday night at Beyond the Wine on Palm and Knees, right next to Eureka Burger. Beyond the Wine, it's literally 1 door over. We're there every single Wednesday and every single Thursday. Wednesdays is 8 to 10. Thursdays is 8 to 11.
Oh, that's why I don't see it at Yosemite Falls. I'm usually done by that time, because I'm like,
Right.
wait, they have country music before that.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you're there on the later schedule. Wow.
Yeah.
That's just like 2 bands back to back. That's a very
Right.
poppin' Wednesday.
Right. We
So what time are you at the other spot at Beyond the Wine?
Beyond the Wine, we're there 8 to 11.
Wow, okay.
So usually we're like a night band. We like to do from 8 p.m. to 12. We're going to be at Lucy's this Friday from 9 to 12. So we mix it up, super late, whatever we can do.
And so it's who all sings? It's you and then
So I'm the main singer, but I also have, his name is Gina Bella, he's my drummer, and he also does the sound, and he sings vocals too, along with Harley Giles, he's my guitar player, and he sings too.
I love that. I love when everybody gets involved and you all sing. That's the
My
best.
goal is to have everybody have a microphone so they can all interact with the crowd, all talk to everybody. So soon, and they're going to find out very soon that they're all going to have a microphone. So I haven't told them yet, though.
That's funny. Well, now you're going to put them on the spot.
Exactly. That's what they get. I love it.
So what about female vocalists? Do you have any of those?
So not yet. That is an option, but it's going to sound funny, but me and Jean have a pretty high register, so we kind of do the girl parts too when we need to. But that also gives me that gives me time to get, you know, the crowd involved too. So we'll be singing a song and I'll let them know, hey, I don't have a lady singer up here. Ladies, help me out. And so most of the time they do. It's pretty fun.
Wow, that's really cool. And so when you do these venues, like when you're doing Lucy's Lunch on Saturday, so you guys promote it and then you can kind of bring your people there.
Oh yeah. We bring.
You have groupies.
Definitely.
So it sounds funny, but actually, when you're performing for this much around town, people would do want to go, and you want
Right.
to, when you fall for like that music, and you're like, wow, this is like my band. I jive with them. They become your groupie.
Oh yeah, and I love that. The word groupie is funny, but like, yeah, no, I mean,
At the end of the
definitely
day,
have.
your tribe. Your
Yeah,
groupies.
yeah.
So you let them know, and then they come and they bring it.
Oh, yeah.
So that means you can kind of fill a night, any place in town.
Yes, we definitely like to say we bring at least 15 to 20 people each time, which is a little bit. We can even bring more if we advertise
Depending
a
on
lot
how big
more,
the place, because
but-
Lucy's is kind of small, so it's
Right.
easy to pack that place.
Right. Standing room only usually when we're there.
Do you do any original music?
We're working on it. Me and Jean, we're working on some original. We have one, but it's still under wraps right now. We're not ready to release it yet. But yeah, no, Jean is one of the most talented people in Fresno when it comes to music, and he has thousands of beats on his laptop right now waiting for us.
Wow.
We just have to write.
How long have you guys been in band, Vibe Check?
Vibe Check has been together for about 8 months now.
And before that, you guys were all in other different places, right?
Yes, yeah. So we bring them all together, and yeah, no.
So now all of you guys are just exclusively Vibe Check?
No, some of them still do play for their other bands. Like my bass player has his own band.
Because you guys are so busy, I was like, I wouldn't think they'd have time to be with other bands.
Right, and he really doesn't, but you know, he fits them in when he can.
Wow, that's really cool. Well, I want to hear your sound, so maybe, yeah, I'll definitely come out and see that. How often do you guys play with Lucy's?
At Lucy's, I would say, you know, once or twice almost once a month, I would say, once a month. But the way you can really catch us is our residencies, which is Wednesday and Thursday.
And those are good nights, because there's not a lot going on those nights.
Exactly, and that's kind of for Thursdays, we call it Therapy Thursdays. And so, you know, you get your little music fix right before the weekend kicks off, and yeah, it's fun.
I can't even imagine you just doing acoustics. Where do you do that at?
Oh, acoustic shows, you know, wherever they want us to. You know, the smaller venues, we can do like, you know, 1 or 2 people. But I prefer always bringing the big band just because it gets crazy, gets people dancing, and it's super fun.
Do you have someone that does keyboards? Or?
Oh yeah, his name is Marco Flores. He's one of the original people that started Vibe Check with me, and yeah, no, he's great, and he's gonna have a microphone too soon too. So,
how did you guys all meet up in the first place?
Ooh, that's a good question. It was really, you know, Marco actually was one of the guys that really, me and him started the band together. And he created, you know, he got a bunch of people to get together. You know, I had a couple of people come with me, but once we weeded out all the other people, we realized that core 5 or 6 guys were the best people to come through and do the good shows.
Oh my goodness. Well, where can we go to follow you, and where can we actually see the sound? So you have the Vibe Check on Instagram.
Vibe Check on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, which is vibecheck.theband. We do have for bookings purposes, it's bookings.vibecheck@gmail.com.
Okay, so we can email you directly and all that.
Send me an
I was
email.
going to say, what's your phone number?
Right, 559-304-6375.
Oh, that's
Only
an
for
easy
booking.
One. That's an easy one. I like that. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, and we're all going to check it out.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Felt right in the moment, felt right in the summertime. It felt right drinking cherry wine with you. Just wanted to own it, just wanted to take the time, learn all the things that I could about you. Now it's such a mess here, oh, we are just stressed here. Used to be so easy with you. Now I must confess here, oh, I must confess, dear, don't think I'm in love with you. Winter is coming and I don't know what to do, and there's no more use in running, no more running to you. And I don't want your loving, I don't wanna be just friends, knowing all this time we were playing pretend.
It's a mystery.